Welcome to the fourth episode of the Force Geeks, a Star Wars podcast. New episodes dropping on Mondays, and we really appreciate you trying out a new podcast with us. So joining us here, I really do appreciate it. So is my good friend Jake Scott, my longtime friend and fellow Force Geek. Jake, how's the week been for you?
Oh, pretty good. You know, I was very excited to see we've got a listener all the way out in Norway. So whoever they are, welcome to you, sir, madam, or whatever. It's good to see you. And yeah, things are good here in Seattle.
We're on in 3 continents right now. I was looking at some of the statistics coming in. We've got someone in Asia. We got actually a couple different ones in Europe now, with Norway and the UK joining the ranks. And then also hitting up several states here in the U.S. So not bad for 4 episodes, actually 3 up to this point. So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. I know, it's exciting.
Well, speaking of the excitement, let's talk about what you're going to hear today in this episode of The Force Geeks. We're going to start with what we have coming up. We'll review the latest Mandalorian episode, I should say Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, and we got a lot of thoughts on this one. We'll also discuss the opening of the new Rise of the Resistance ride, which is now open at Galaxy's Edge at Disney World, and soon to be opening next month at Disneyland, the location in California. Again, that'll be next month in January. However, Jake, he just informed me a few moments ago, there's been some issues. We'll talk about what's going on there and what you'd expect if you're trying to check out that ride immediately. Also, Baby Yoda officially licensed merch. Don't expect it until at least April is what we're hearing, possibly May. The cutie on the internet who has totally taken the internet by surprise. Yeah, not till April or May. And The Rise of Skywalker. Could it be the last time Daisy Ridley will wield a lightsaber in the galaxy far, far away? As Mark Hamill would say, it's possible. So we'll talk about that as well. And the Rise of Skywalker reviews coming in from its cast, because they have seen the movie. J.J. Abrams locked in the movie last week, and he screened it for the actors. What do they have to say about the final chapter of the Skywalker saga? Well, we're going to find out, because I've seen a few folks posting to Twitter, and we're actually trying to play you some of that footage, too, from one of the actors who had something to say about it. So, Jake, my friend.
Yes, sir.
My brother, the Force Geek. Let's go ahead and get into this right now.
Yeah.
You saw Mando Chapter 5, The Gunslinger, how many times?
3, I think.
Okay, you're up on me because I actually got a chance to watch 2. We both have families we're taking care of here recently on our own. Just me for a day, you for a weekend.
Yeah, it's always hard when the wife's out of town.
Yeah. So dad duty's coming into play, but really loving this episode. So I watched it 2.5 times, I'll say. So you're up on me on this.
Fair enough.
So coming in this, it's important to note, this is the second episode or chapter that Dave Filoni has directed. So he directed the first one, the one that introduced us to who the Mandalorian is and that whole thing. He did a great job with that first one. And then also, again, you got to remember that these episodes that he's directing, these chapters, they're the first live action directing he's been doing. Tons of experience in the animated world, as we know from the Clone Wars, which I know you were a big fan of as well, Jake.
Oh, absolutely. One of my favorites, although Rebels is starting to catch it in terms of which I like more. But Clone Wars was awesome.
There's some great moments in Rebels, which, as you just stated, another Filoni project that he did.
Works.
So, just so great. I'm not as big on the new one that's out there that has been happening on Disney recently. It's the 3rd animated series that he's done. Not my favorite, but there's some interesting nuggets in there, but it's made for younger children.
Yeah, it's definitely a whole different world from the other 2 shows, for sure.
So what stands out to you most about this episode for you, for this Chapter 5, The Gunslinger? If there was one thing that stood out to you, what is it this week?
I would have to say, it's hard to boil it down to one, but I would say that we're starting to finally see the fruits of his labor, so to speak. You know, last episode, our last chapter, the sin, when we start thinking about what's going to happen when everybody comes looking for him, well, now we're really starting to see it when we open up with a space battle with him getting chased down by another bounty hunter, and that awesome, that's my line, and then he blows him up. That was awesome.
That was a good moment.
Yeah, so now he's trying to get back to his normal way of doing things, chasing down bounties, and he's having to watch his back the entire time way more than normal, which, hey, it's good he's got the Beskar now. That's for sure.
I think the thing that really stood out to me the most is we're going back to Tatooine.
Yes.
And honestly, this is the first time we've gone back to Tatooine in the timeline since Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
Last time we were on Tatooine, Jabba had just died.
Yep.
So this is so cool that we're finally going back, because for geeks like us, we're the fanboys in our 40s that love this. So it was so cool to go back to this place that we have known and is really part of our childhood.
Yep.
And finally, we're going back to it. And also that, we're getting a ton a ton of Easter eggs and references
Oh,
that
yeah.
draw back to not just the original trilogy, but also to the prequel era trilogy, because as soon as he lands, you see Pit Droid.
That's really cool. It's kind of like going back to the house you grew up in another town, just the nostalgia there of Tatooine. And we finally learn the name of the planet when they started the series, because they talk a lot about it in this episode, which is cool. So
yeah, obviously we have Mos Eisley,
Yep.
we have Mos Espa,
Yep.
which is cool to hear that reference, because you of course know that Mos Espa was the place where we went in the prequel era, where Anakin Skywalker was from,
Yep.
and his mother Shmi, and then you also have, that's where the pod racing was. So Jabba in control of pretty much all of Tatooine, obviously, and so you know that from the EU and even from canon that Jabba had a very wide reach there in the Outer Rim territories. So that was kind of his stable of operations, was right there from Tatooine. So that was pretty cool to check out. I love that the pit droids were active right there, because I always thought they were kind of funny. It's good for a little comical relief for a moment, and also a drawback to the old prequels, but also that you see the vacuum that's left after the death of Jabba, because this is 5-6 years after Jabba has died, because after Return of the Jedi.
Exactly.
So you then see that, like, the Bounty Guild is not operating on Tatooine anymore.
Yep.
Bounty hunters were very much a part of Jabba's world. So now you're seeing that these guys, there's a vacuum that's been created, so it seems pretty disorganized, and that was kind of fun to see.
Yeah, it's even more rough and ready, than a lot of the other places, just because, like you said, Jabba was kind of the law on Tatooine, and, his clan behind him as well. And to have him be gone, it does leave a huge power vacuum, and a lot of stuff gets disorganized, and now everybody's just kind of on their own and doing their own thing. It is kind of interesting to see that. The droids, what is with the Mandalorian? He obviously hates droids. The first episode, he didn't want the droid speeder, he didn't, no droids. And then, no, he doesn't want the droids fixing his ship, even though they would do a better job, they would do it faster, they would do it cheaper. Seems...
And you know why, right?
Well, why don't you tell me what you think? Is
I
he
think
Jean
because...
Vong deep inside and we just don't know?
No, I think that because he was nearly killed and his parents were killed by battle
that
droids,
makes sense, I suppose.
That's the droid aversion he has, because they killed his parents.
How the hell would you ever
killed his
live
family.
in the Star Wars universe if you were that upset about droids? Because they're everywhere.
I know. They're so useful in so many ways. I want my own R2-D2, my own C-3PO. I mean, I'd probably get annoyed with C-3PO in all reality.
I mean, that would be like surviving rabies somehow and then hating water for the rest of your life. It's like, you just can't, It doesn't work.
No. So you've got that going on. And then also the big reference that I'm sure all of us super Star Wars nerds really loved seeing is we're finally back in the cantina. The cantina is so great. And it was so neat to see that going on. Because then you see Toro Calican, the kid trying to get into the guild, trying to make a name for himself, and the throwback to Han Solo sitting in that very spot before he met with Greedo, and all kicked back in the same exact fashion. That was so cool to see, in a great Easter egg.
Yeah, it was definitely, kind of a Han Solo look-alike in a lot of ways, in the same exact seat, sitting the same way and all of that. Yeah, and trying to...
And that swagger.
Be a badass.
Well, Han had more experience at it.
Very
and this
true.
guy's just making a name for himself. So you can imagine he is a very Han type.
Yeah.
And, again, spoilers should be known. It's in the title of our podcast here, but getting really spoilerific, if he wasn't killed at the end, then he had like another 10, 15 years of time to develop. He could have been another Han type.
Yeah.
That kind of, I think he had that kind of mentality, and it's cool to go back to the cantina, meet a Han type, but this guy doesn't get the same resolve that Han Solo gets. He doesn't get the same chance at life that
he
Han
didn't have the amount of time that he would have needed to marry a princess and have a kid and then have that kid murder him.
Right. There's that part of the problem in the equation.
Yeah.
Neither one gets a very good ending.
No.
Neither one does. How about Amy Sedaris in Star Wars? That is something I never thought I would see.
Yeah. That's interesting.
You remember her from Strangers with Candy, the old Comedy Central episode shows?
I don't, actually.
Yeah. Check out late 90s, early 2000s Strangers with Candy.
I always stayed away with
from
Strangers with Candy, I wasn't down for that.
That's the whole point. That was the whole point of the
band,
show.
It's like a no-go, no bueno.
So that was really cool. Amy Sedaris, if you're not familiar with her, you should check her out. Very funny comedian and a funny actress. She's got a lot of great things. She's the sister of David Sedaris, who's also got a very big name for himself as well. Yeah,
and I liked the role she did. It was cool.
How about that perm, the curls, man? That was a different look for her.
Yeah.
It was very funny to see.
That was definitely like, the late 80s, like Empire Strikes Back era hair.
It looked like it belonged from that era. It totally did, from the 80s.
Like that's how my mom used to wear her hair. around that time.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, we got to get to the point, too, that I know you were quite excited to see. Ming-Na Wen playing the character Fennec Shand. And Ming-Na Wen she's actually pretty good in the nerd circles, having taken part in some pretty good properties over the years. She was a Stargate person. Stargate Universe, SGU. She was on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well.
And she did the voice of the main female protagonist in the Final Fantasy movie, that original Final Fantasy movie that came out in
I didn't know that.
Right around the time I moved over to Pullman, actually. And she did the voice for the female in there and did a really good job. It was a great movie. The intro to real, seriously good quality computer animated stuff. Great movie. You should watch it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it was good. It was definitely good. I remember that. So a little homework for you. You know, we're a Star Wars show, but we branch out in other nerd stuff, too.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, and I have a bit of a crush on Ming-Na Wen. She's gorgeous, for sure.
So I could just picture you watching this and hearing this kind of coming out of your mouth at some point where you hear a little as soon as she came up.
I have never been as good at making that noise as you have, Nate, but yes, that was definitely in there.
I won't lie, it's come in handy over the years. Totally come in handy.
Know.
All right. Speeder bikes are in this show, in this chapter. Tusken Raiders, which I loved the introduction of the Tusken Raiders and how they did that and had a little fun with the Mandalorian, really enjoying that moment. Banthas, a dewback, lots of good Easter eggs in this. Such a great callback to the old days of the original trilogy.
Well, and the Tusken sign language that the Mando was doing, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever seen that before in terms of...
I definitely hadn't.
On screen, anyway. And maybe it's been in the comics and I've missed it, but that was very interesting. I mean, the Tuskens,
kind of waiting for...
all they do is kind of make weird noises, kind of like you were just doing, actually. And so, maybe they don't like to use words. Maybe they do other things. Who knows?
I was almost waiting to hear the sound of a crate dragon in the background trying to scare him off, so that would have been funny.
That would have been hilarious. And Obi-Wan and making a weird noise.
You had to know at some point this partnership, this bounty brotherhood was going to fall apart at some point because obviously the Mando comes into place. He wants to get some job. He needs to be able to pay for the repairs on his ship. He needs to be able to get some food, needs to pay everything that's going on because the guy is running from his past life.
Yeah, he's got
Where's he going to go?
And stuff to keep his ship going and keep out of the reach of the guild. I don't know. I mean, Star Wars is such a huge universe full of planets that hardly anybody goes to. You wouldn't think it would be that hard, but if everybody's got the tracking fob for Yoda, then he's never going to be able to get away.
I'm just curious, what's the end game? When are we going to talk about the end game, what he's trying to work toward? Because, one, we know that he wants to dump off the child somewhere, baby Yoda. He wants to get rid of the child where it's safe. He feels this responsibility to take care of that child. But he also is fairly reckless. Like, he just leaves the child sleeping when he lands on Tatooine, just walks away and doesn't worry about anything.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, like, seriously, there are bounty hunters trying to find you. They found you once already. They just found you again in space, which is the whole reason you had to land on Tatooine in the first place to get your ship repaired. And he just walks off and leaves it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem very smart, and there's no CPS chapter on Tatooine, I'm sure. So he probably thought it was okay. But, you're right. It seems like a tactical error, and he's made a few of those since we started to see him, which I've seen some people saying is part of what makes him so likable, is that he's realistic. He's not Thanos. He's not this unstoppable machine that never makes mistakes. He's not Grand Admiral Thrawn. He screws up sometimes like a human being and has to pay the price, which is cool.
Yeah, the guy has some dumb moments. I mean, let's just call it what it is. But it's so funny because, I know that if I'm trying to figure out that life, I'm going to make some mistakes along the way. And so I think you're right. I think it makes him more relatable. We like the guy because he's far from perfect. But he has this calling to do the right thing, which he's kind of constantly at battle with. He doesn't want to be a nice guy. No. Obviously, he's a bounty hunter. He chose this life, but he's got a heart.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the end game, I think that he is right now kind of in a holding pattern. I'm sure that the character in real life would have some sort of idea of what they're doing, but obviously, dramatic irony-wise, we haven't been given any of the insight into what he's got going on in his head for what he's going to do other than just trying to stay out of reach long enough for what?
What's he doing? Where's he going? Where does he think he's going to be able to go at this point? You got the Bounty Hunter Guild against you. You got former Empire, officials after you. What is he trying to work toward? I can't wait to find out more about that.
Why not just go to the Republic?
Yeah.
Honestly, that would be his best bet, really, if you think about it.
Well, maybe, unless he's got crimes against him. He is a Mando. He's a bounty hunter. He might have some issues with the New Republic.
But, at least in the EU anyway, they've never been shy. Well, even in Rogue One, they've never been shy about handing out pardons for people who are doing the right thing or helping them out or whatever.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, something to consider.
I mean, they were happy to give Jyn Erso a pass on all her crap that she had done.
True.
And,
True.
she was definitely no choir girl because she was raised by Saw Gerrera, who was the bad guy of bad guys, really. All the wrong things for the right reasons in his head, anyway.
Yeah.
So,
guerrilla tactics, for sure. He was going out on his own. Okay. This partnership that establishes, we seem like there's some good kind of like tutelage happening. The Mando's trying to teach him some things along the way. And again, I think, obviously, this is self-serving, but at the same time, he does seem to actually care that this guy gets through this whole experience. He's not trying to double-cross him.
Yeah.
He's trying to honor his word, but the double-cross eventually comes. And it's not the Mando, it is this guy, Toro Calican, who winds up listening to Fennec Shand. And I gotta say, I'm so disappointed that she was killed so quickly.
Yeah.
She's such a great actress, and she's got a name. I'm just curious why they wanted to kill her off so quickly.
Well, I guess the obvious answer to that is maybe she's not dead.
Maybe, but I kind of feel like her character is a one-and-done sort of deal. If you're putting your thoughts to this, what do you think the odds are that she comes back in another episode?
A third. 33%. Yeah. I think it's possible.
The only character that I give 100% going to show up again is Werner Herzog's character.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to see him again, probably toward the end. I have a feeling, if I'm looking at this, because we know from the trailer, there's apparently a point where Werner Herzog's character is telling him there's a whole bunch of stormtroopers that are waiting for you outside, and he likes that. He's like, good. We haven't seen that yet, so we got to know that's going to happen here soon. If there's another character I'm looking at potentially is going to come back, I think of all the characters met that I think we're definitely going to see again, it's got to be Cara Dune, and 50-50 with the Widow.
Oh, yeah. I think that the Omera is probably closer to 100%. I just really have a strong feeling that she's there for a reason, and I think that they left too many open questions to not answer them with her.
Giancarlo Esposito, a really talented actor, and he's worked on other projects with Jon Favreau before, with the series that was on NBC that was about post-apocalyptic world living where they are trying, like, no one has power. Power doesn't work anywhere. Did you see that came out, I want to say back in 2012,
Yeah,
2013.
it was, crap.
Start with an R.
It did.
It
was like Rebirth or Reject or,
like
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
Renob. I can't remember what it was, but I know exactly the series you're talking about. They had solar flare and it killed all the power, and then they're having to basically rebuild society as an agrarian thing. And he was in it as a bad guy, kind of like the ringleader of the roving tribes of pirates that go around and harass everybody. That was a good show.
And he's playing, it seems like, a similar role as the villain in this one, which we have not seen him yet. We've seen him in the trailers for this show. We've seen him talking about the show at various Star Wars events that we saw actually over the summer. He was talking about it. So we know that at some point it's going to happen. Yeah. He's coming in. I think that it's going to be episode 7 he comes to play. I think he gets a two-show story arc because we've already got chapter 5. Has happened. Yep. We're already more than halfway through the 8 chapters that we get for this season 1. Yeah. We're already more than halfway through. Yep. Soon it's going to be done, and we're going to have to wait a whole nother year.
I know. It's going to be really hard. It's interesting you bring up that particular actor. He gets typecast so bad, it seems like, he's like the Rick Rossovich of the era,
Yeah. All right. Well, I can't wait to see what happens there. So we know that he is playing a former Empire person as well, a warlord of some sort. So can't wait for that to come in. That's what I'm really waiting for, this showdown. And we're leading up to it throughout this season. We're leading up to something big. We know Werner Herzog's coming back. We know we're going to see Giancarlo Esposito's character, which the name he's got, his character, it's escaping me at the moment, but I'll make sure I write that down when I want to talk about him again. So let's go ahead and get back to, if you're rating this story now, with the double cross, what happens? You got the whole thing that goes down with Peli being taken captive by Toro before the Mando gets the drop on him and shoots him and frees Baby Yoda. If you're rating this episode, how's it rank for you?
Honestly, I would say this one has been my least favorite. So I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's hard to make it all make sense just because the show is so good and I've got so many nerd tingles about it. It's hard to say that it's not good. And when I say that it's my least favorite, it's still awesome. It's like my least favorite ice cream kind of thing. It's all, I love it all, but I love this one just a tiny bit less.
And we can be critical of Star Wars, knowing full well that we love Star Wars. Yeah, Why else would we be doing this podcast? We're going to be a little critical at times, but at the same time, super happy with everything we're getting. Loving the fact that we're doing a little bit more story building, a little bit more galaxy building, if you will, for what's going on, especially finding out what's happening after the Empire falls and you're in the Outer Rim where you're not in the core, where the new Republic is taking control of things. This is unexplored area of Star Wars lore.
Yes.
So we're getting a chance to do that. So I'm happy with anything they do, but I will say that I don't think this episode is my least favorite. I would probably say the last episode. So Chapter 4 was probably my least favorite of them all, just because I felt like you brought up before, it was A-Team in space.
Yeah.
It was a very formulaic chapter. I was disappointed. It serves a purpose. Exactly. It serves a purpose, though. It's advancing part of the story. It lets you know, I think the most important thing that chapter did was let you know that, yeah, they can still find them.
Yes.
So there's this, as the A-Team had to worry about, the exact same storyline. They could never stay in one place too long. They have to move on, despite the attachments they form. Because how many times, because we're 80s kids, how many times did we see Face make a connection, a romantic connection of some sort, and have to leave it behind? It happened a few times. It was a storyline. So.
Yeah, that's the sucky part about being a federal fugitive, right?
Right.
Just really interferes with your love life.
And it's funny because you talk about Face, the guy that looks good of all of them, then you've got the Mando who has no face that we know of.
Exactly.
And he's still getting some play.
Oh, yeah.
What up, Mando?
Well, maybe he's like Boba Fett underneath there, and he's got the Sarlacc wounds all over him, and the acid burns and everything.
And let's be real, the Widow, she thinks she can change him, as all women think they can change us. And not to play the old male card here, but I think it's funny that trope comes into play.
But you are an old male.
Yeah, I am. I am an old male. That's the way it works. In my 40s.
Just a little bit
getting older every second.
Oh, yes.
Been dying since the day we were born.
Hey,
there
that's
you go.
better than the alternative, right? So.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, well, I liked the episode. If I'm rating it, again, I put it in my top, since there's only 5, so it's not hard to pick a top one, but I would put this one probably number 3 for me, just because I love the callback to Tatooine.
Yeah, top 5 Mandalorian episodes. Number 7.
Yeah. Now let's go and get into the rest of the talk that we need to get into. This show has really made me open my eyes to something important. A realization, a truth, if you will, has come to mind for me. And that is, Jake, that Star Wars is not for me. I've talked about this a little bit before in the podcast, but after watching this episode, I was thinking about, this isn't exactly what I want to see.
Yeah.
And as I'm watching the episode, I'm thinking, but 9-year-old me would have loved this show so much. I like this show. I appreciate the show. But 9-year-old me would have been just down for this show.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I don't know. I mean, I think I got to disagree with you on this one. I mean, I know that it's been said by George Lucas.
Well, light me up. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been said by George Lucas that Star Wars is not just for grown-ups and that all the 40-year-old nerds need to just shut up and let the kids enjoy it. But I don't know. I don't get the kid feeling from The Mandalorian. I mean, I know it's Disney and it's, pretty PG by today's standards, but I think that there's a lot of complexity there that we don't really see yet because we haven't gotten to the point of it being made obvious. It's like you said before, you're advancing the story. I think there's a lot of background going on that a lot of kids wouldn't catch necessarily, and we aren't even catching it yet because we haven't been given all the tools to see it. But once we get a little further in and lines start to get tied together based on earlier episodes, I think it's going to be more obvious where they were doing that. And I think that's where last week's episode really will come in, is going to be one of those, bridges, putting things together for later use.
You make a lot of good points. But it's for kids. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The answer is it's for kids.
Well, my kids love it, if that tells you anything. So
it tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah.
Tell me, what are your kids' reactions to this? What are they telling you, or what are you seeing from them they're watching? Because my kids like it too.
Well,
and they're young. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
So, I mean, it's Matthew, who's almost 16, is watching it, and, my 8-year-old's watching it. And the 8-year-old loves Baby Yoda. That's like his thing.
Well, of course.
Of course, yeah, exactly. So it's all about...
You don't have a heart if you don't like Baby Yoda.
Exactly. You're not a human being if you don't like Baby Yoda. He talks about Baby Yoda a lot and wants to see him all the time, which is good because he gets to see him every time. Matthew, he's 16, so he's more into the gunslinging thing. And he loves the armor, the Mandalorian armor, and he loves the lore of the Mandalorians. And he has a lot of exposure to the EU like I do, so he has a lot of that background that I have of the Mandalorian lore. And that's what excites him, the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, so to speak. But we all love it. I mean, it's a great show.
To quote Billie Eilish, I'd like to say, Duh.
Yeah.
Of course. This is such great stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to see this happening because finally, like, we know because Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, has said we're going to hit the pause button on Star Wars movies for a while. So at least we get television for the foreseeable future because this is not the only series that we know of coming. We've got the Obi-Wan series that's going to be happening. We've got Cassian Andor's series that's coming up. And they're also exploring other ones. They just haven't announced them yet. So there's a lot of possibility in the next few years to satisfy, to wet our whistle, so to speak, when it comes to Star Wars and in that galaxy building. And I'm really glad.
That Cassian Andor series is going to be a lot like The Mandalorian, I'm guessing, because he's going to be out on the fringes too, doing the dirty work from the other side, not for money.
It's going to be a spy drama, I think.
Yeah. It's going to be gritty, I think. I mean, just the little bit we saw of him at the beginning of Rogue One, right? Where they're on the space station and he ends up shooting that guy just merely out of convenience.
He had to.
I don't have time to help you, so I'm going to kill you, kind of thing.
I've done some pretty awful things for the rebellion. How about you? Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Have a nice day. Yeah, so I really think that it's going to fit in.
Here's a blaster bolt for your troubles.
Exactly. I think it's going to fit in really well there in terms of being a lot like The Mandalorian. And I hope they do it that way because I think that there's a lot of really cool lines to explore there from the rebellion side of things and showing kind of in Rogue One style, especially if you read the book, just how far people had to go to accomplish the goal. You know, it's kind of like World
the whole
War
rebellion's
II.
done if they didn't.
You know, we're going to firebomb entire cities just to get to our target kind of thing.
Well, and on top of that, if you look at those movies, and I talk about Star Wars for kids, if there was one property in this franchise that was made for adults, it's Rogue One.
Yeah.
Rogue One was very adult in nature because it's dealing with a lot of stuff. Kids like it, but the younger kids, not so much. You got some things that were definitely over their heads and probably not as much for them. This was for our generation.
Yeah.
The grittiness of Rogue One, and I hope that translates with Tony Gilroy coming in, who helped finish off that movie with the reshoots that happened for Rogue One. With him coming in to really, drive the ship on this one, that gives me high hope that grittiness will translate and that those shows will be a little bit more for an older crowd. And I really loved that about Rogue One.
Yeah. Well, I think that like the Cassian Andor property, for example, it's going to be kind of like the Battlestar Galactica reboot. That was very raw and gritty. And
it was awesome. It's one of the greatest sci-fi shows ever.
Absolutely. Without a doubt.
I keep hoping they'll bring Katie Sackhoff into the Star Wars universe at some point. I love her.
Yeah. I don't know. I think she said she was done doing sci-fi in the last
She's doing sci-fi right now for Netflix.
Yeah, I know. Netflix,
Another life.
Netflix.
Another life, she's doing
like crack. Nobody can stay away.
It's an interesting way to put it, Jake. I like that. It's like crack. Okay.
Yeah, it's not that I would know, but I've heard.
All right. Well, let's get off this whole thing, my tirade that Star Wars is for 9-year-old me because 40-some-odd-year-old me does love the crack. Loves it. Rise of the Resistance ride. Jake, I sent you in folks, go ahead and jump on the old Google machine and check out CNET and their review of the Rise of the Resistance ride that just opened up at Galaxy's Edge at Disney World in Florida, in Orlando, because the woman who did this review of the ride, she shows you a whole bunch, and she warns you there's some spoilerific stuff. There's a lot of it she couldn't show you, so don't worry too much about the spoilers.
Yeah.
If you want to go in and not have any idea what's happening, then don't watch the review. But she is straight up emotional after she goes. She had to take a break from talking about it so she could collect herself.
Hey, that's the ultimate nerd tingles right there, and I can completely sympathize with that, because I'll tell you what, sometimes, like when I read the article that I sent you about the ride where they were talking about having the SUV-sized X-Wing drones flying over the thing.
Yeah, they're flying freaking X-Wings overhead.
I just about lost it.
It's crazy.
I'm like, oh my God, how much better can life get?
You talk about geek tingles, I say geek chub. Yeah. It's happening.
I'm not going there.
It's happening at that point. You tell me that there's flying X-Wings above me?
Yeah, like...
If you'd have told 9-year-old me this, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah, well, we grew up in the day with no internet and cell phones, so there you go.
We suffered because of it, too.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, we were probably better off for it, to be honest with you. You know what we would have been looking at? We would have been using the internet for some bad stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I can tell you that.
You can't spend your entire childhood looking at internet porn if there is no internet, right? So...
You went straight for it. I was going to allude to it. You went right there, Jake.
Well, you know me.
You saw the hook and you just snapped on it.
Jumped right on it and put it through my lip. Yeah.
This thing looks so cool because it
cool.
really, where Star Tours started, the whole idea of this immersive experience, Rise of the Resistance takes you even further in real life ways. Not completely real because there is some simulation going on, but still, it looks so cool, and she's not the only person who's given it an emotional review afterward because you feel like you're in a Star Wars movie.
Yep. Well, one of my friends lives down there, and he's going on the 21st, so I'm going to be curious to hear what he has to say. You know, he just moved down there in August after his wife took a job working for Disney, and so they get in all the time. They're at the parks. Like, he sends me pictures constantly, texts me stuff of him hanging out at the Star Wars thing and standing.
Be honest, you hate him a little bit for it.
Just a little bit, yeah. Well, it's like I told him yesterday, you know, it's like hate might be a strong word, but it's pretty close. And that's why he's doing it, too. He's just teasing me because that's just kind of how he is. I'm talking to you, Josh, by the way.
We're jealous.
Yeah.
We're straight up jealous.
So I need to get down there to visit because they'll take me to go, and I really want to check it out. Going to be really, I'm sure I'll hear all about the ride when he goes.
You and I need to coordinate a trip together. We're going to make this happen.
Oh, yeah.
We will go, and we will nerd out hardcore. It'll be Geek Fest Central for us.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see.
I'm dying to go to Galaxy's Edge.
Josh has 8 bedrooms. We go stay with him.
Done.
So, you know, we should go.
I want him to be my new best friend.
Oh, you would like him. He's a good guy.
We're going to go do this. We're going to make this happen. We're going to get to Galaxy's Edge. I'm going to spend a crap load of money there. It's going to be ridiculous. I'm building a lightsaber.
You're going to make a lightsaber for $200 or whatever it is?
Yep. Doing it. Don't care. Yep. Take my money, please, Disney. It's happening.
Here, take it all. Here's my credit card. Max it out.
Oh, man. Well, okay. So you've heard about some of the stuff going on with this, though. And
I have.
You know, what have you heard about the experiences going on?
Well, I've read a few articles, you know, that all say basically the same thing. The ride's awesome, but that there have been quite a few technical difficulties, so to speak, and that they've had to shut the ride down. Yeah, and, you know, have people go away for a while and then give a fast pass for them to come back when the ride's up and going again, which, you know, is a disappointment and kind of reminiscent of what happened when Disney Plus was launched.
Let me just say this. We have no affiliation with Disney, despite the fact that Jake has a very good friend who is connected to Disney.
Correct.
We are not connected, affiliated in any way, shape, or form, obviously, because we're a brand new podcast. They don't know about us. They've never heard of us. But at the same time, let me just say a moment that I am so impressed with the Disney experience. When I went to Disney World this last spring with my family, there was an issue that happened, and they went above and beyond to make it better. You talk about they give you that fast pass for those people that are experiencing difficulties. It's a brand new ride. Some kinks are going to have to be worked out of it, despite all the prep work that goes into making it ready. I mean, Disneyland, when it opened the first day, they didn't have water. Running water, which, by the way, Disney Plus, check out the Imagineers series. You're going to learn about the magic it takes to make rides like the Rise of the Resistance happen and everything that happened leading up to the beginning with Disney himself. This is all plays into things. So there's going to be some problems, which is why I'm planning to not go when things open. I wait a few months until they're open and ready, and then I'm going to drop my coin. But Disney will make it up to you.
I'm super understanding about that stuff. You know, I know some people get all bent out of shape over things like that, and I'm just like, you know, we can't control
Get over yourself.
Let it go.
Yeah, this stuff is going to happen. It's fine. They'll make it better. They went above and beyond and delivered even more than we could have hoped for.
Exactly.
So I was so impressed with that. Okay, so let me go and move on to the next part here. So they've had some issues. You got to expect that. Just exercise some patience. You'll be fine. They'll take care of you.
Yes.
Here's the next thing. We were talking about Baby Yoda earlier and how much we love Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda licensed merch. We talked about this in the last episode of this show, that it's not out there. And as a matter of fact, it's a lot of like counterfeit stuff right now that you're getting. You're not going to get merch until April or May when we're talking about Funko Pops. We're talking about plush toys, that sort of thing. In fact, my wife right now has one of my Yoda plushes I got from part of the Smuggler's Bounty that I took part in, where I get that service, where you get Funko Pops and T-shirts and socks and whatever gear patches and stuff they want to give you. And one of those I got a couple years ago, they gave me a Yoda plush. Now, here's the thing. She put it on there and tagged Baby Yoda in it, but she's like letting everyone know, like, there is no official Baby Yoda merch out there. This is a small plush toy of the actual Yoda. So it's still getting tons of views and watches, even though she's plainly stating this is not Baby Yoda. People want Baby Yoda that much, they don't care because there's nothing to buy.
I know.
They're bidding on this stuff on eBay like crazy.
This is the time to get in. If you had the merchandise, this would be the time to have it out. But, you know, it's like you said a couple episodes ago, secrecy-wise, they had to keep everything on the DL, and now we're having
They were
to pay
smart,
for it.
and I appreciate
Yeah.
that they did. Yeah,
No.
they're not making the money they would have made, but they'll get it later.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get it later.
It'll be delayed, but it'll definitely still be there. It's going to explode when it does come out. I don't know what the timeline looks like for episodes and stuff, but there'll still be stuff going on. TV-wise and everything, so I don't think
there's another season. Baby Yoda's in it. We know he's gonna be in the next season.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're not getting rid of Baby Yoda. They know what a gold mine he is.
Absolutely. They need to make him a little.
Baby Yoda is made of gold.
They need to make him like a gold suit of Beskar.
There you go.
Solid gold, baby. And it can have ears sticking off to the sides to fit his ears into.
To make it work in the Star Wars universe, he's made of iridium.
There you go. But imagine how cool that would be if he had a little helmet with ears sticking off.
This is a popular thing. I've actually seen people talking about this theory that he's going to be inducted into the Mandalorian culture as well. I'm not buying it. He's a Force wielder. Not that Force wielders haven't come from the Mandalorians, but I don't think that's what's happening. I don't see it going that direction, but if it does, I'm in for the ride. I'll go along with it.
I'm not necessarily saying it's going to happen or I think it's likely, but I mean, the Mandalorians, they're not a race. They're a culture. I mean, the original Mandalorians weren't
after the Purge.
Human. So, you know, to them, it's all about battle and weapons and armor as religion. And I think that's what would run into problems with the Baby Yoda, is that I think that they are shown to be more pacifistic than that. And I don't think that it would fit with them. But it would still be really cool.
They gotta, at some point, do some explaining, because there's a disconnect between Rebels and between the Clone Wars of what we know about the Mandalorians.
Yes.
They've got to do something, because there's a disconnect to explain why they can't take their helmets off anymore, because we saw the Death Watch. We saw other Mandalorians take it off in the Clone Wars. Then in, of course, Rebels, they took their helmets off all the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sabine ran around without a helmet on constantly. So that's the only way she can show off her hair, right?
Yeah,
so.
I'm wondering, is it because they don't want people to know that because there was the Purge and so many Mandalorians died because of the Purge? Is it because they think that they need to disguise themselves so you can't tell if they're a Mandalorian by race as opposed to culture, the adoption of culture? Is that why there's the rule now?
I think so. I think that
it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think it's more about them reinforcing the idea that Mandalorian is a culture and not a race, and that you can become Mandalorian. You don't have to be born into it. You just have to, you know, this is the way. You just have to do the way they do and do what they say and go along with what they're doing, and you can be in it too.
I want some prophecy to come into this, because Star Wars loves prophecy.
Prophecy? Okay.
Destiny, prophecy, all that stuff. I want that to come in for the Mandalorian culture, and I'm curious to see if they introduce that and somehow the Mandalorian becomes part of that prophecy, that he's the one who's going to take them into a new era, because we can't have it so we never get to see his face. Yeah, we can't have it so we never see his face. We can't have that. We're going to see his face at some point. They hire a famous actor for a reason. They could have hired anybody. As a matter of fact, from what it sounds like from things on the set, he wasn't even there. Pedro Pascal wasn't even there for a lot of the filming because it didn't need to be.
Exactly. Well,
who knows who's behind that mask?
So, prophecy. So he could be the chosen one. They could call him Mandalore the Faceless.
Maybe. But again, we're going to see his face, so I don't think that's going to work out. But they need to bring in some sort of prophecy to really drive this thing forward so that we know that he's chosen for some reason. Because the way this is working out with the introduction of a Force-wielding Baby Yoda, and I can't wait till we figure out what this child is going to be named.
Yes.
And what his lineage is. Because Star Wars fans, let's be real with ourselves for a second. We appreciate lineage, which is why so many of us were ticked off when we heard that Rey didn't come from anything important. The whole prequel era, the whole original trilogies were all about bloodlines.
Yes.
That's why there's the book about bloodlines.
Parentage.
All the stuff. We love the lineage and the connection. We want that. So at some point, we gotta get more of that. It's what we like. I know it's fan service, and it's cool. And this is actually a topic I had from another part of the show that I want to get into, so I'll save most of it for that. But lineage, fan service, and taking note of what we want, it can be a dangerous game to play, because at some point you want people to go in a new direction to explore things, but you want to make sure you honor the old.
Well, that's why, like we talked about last time, the galaxy's huge. There is plenty of room in the sandbox to come up with all new stories that very loosely follow the rules with new characters, just like they're doing with Mandalorian, and just do that. And they can do whatever they want with it. But, you know, I'm telling you, Rey is a child of the Force, born out of midi-chlorians. You wait.
Maybe Palpatine made her, too. I mean, I can't wait to see how the Emperor plays into this.
Basically the same thing. That's what I'm getting at, is that, you know, she's the female Anakin, basically.
Could be.
And then she can, like,
let's get into...
No!
We're going to talk more about that. I'm going to save that discussion for the week before and the week after. We will have two-part conversation once The Rise of Skywalker comes out, because I'm going to be seeing that thing like 5-6 times.
Oh, yeah.
I know it. And let me talk about that for a moment. Rise of Skywalker. Daisy Ridley, in an interview with British GQ, said she might be done with this character for good. It's not something that's new, because she's talked about this before, that she thinks this is kind of a one-and-done trilogy for her, and that is it. Not going any further with this. And let me tell you about some things she said. She said that her body suffered from the stress that she felt this whole thing. She said she felt like a skeleton was becoming a ghost during the promotions tour in 2017 for The Last Jedi. And I went back to look at some of the videos, and, you know, Daisy is not far off talking about the impact that she looked from when we first met her to where she was looking at that point, that she needed to take better care of herself. And so I'm glad she did. And it sounds like, from what she said, she felt a lot better heading into this Star Wars, because she unplugged for like 6 months, let herself get back to being Daisy Ridley and not worrying about the weight of the world on this whole thing and the stress that comes with that. But, you know, here's the thing, Daisy, is that universally, you are loved by the fans.
Absolutely.
You really are. And there's been so many great things said about her portrayal of Rey. We like her. We think she's a great actress. We think she does a great job. And we like where her story is going.
Absolutely.
We just, you know, want a few extra things that are out of her control, and she doesn't have to bear that weight on her shoulders.
Exactly. I mean, she's just so lovely and so talented. I would hate to see her hurt herself on our behalf, you know. We don't want that. You need to be around for a long time, and take care of yourself, girl, please.
Well, but here she's saying she's done with this character. She's saying The Rise of Skywalker felt like an end and can't imagine playing her again. Exactly what she said. It felt like an end and can't imagine playing her again.
Well,
Mark Hamill said something very similar after the original trilogy.
Yeah, I mean, like Daniel Craig said he'd rather eat broken glass than play Bond again, and yet here he is.
Here we go. New trailer's out.
It's amazing what millions of dollars will do for your motivation, right?
Well, and if there's a good story that comes along, and this is a character that you created, you fostered, and is beloved, how enticing is it if you think, well, that's a really interesting caveat to the story.
Yeah.
I would like to see that. But maybe she's smart about it, not like Mark Hamill, and says, well, there's a few things I'm going to need to come back and reprise this role. Because Mark Hamill didn't get to know that in episode 7, he would only be in the last shot. He didn't find out till the table read that he wasn't going to be in this movie until the end. He kept thinking, okay, this is happening here. This is a big showdown between Rey and Kylo Ren. This has got to be where I come in. Nope. You're not there. Not to the very end. And oh, by the way, you don't say a single word in this movie. And then on top of that, he's like, well, I'm already on board for the whole trilogy because I signed the contract. And then he finds out what happens to his character when he disagrees with every single choice made.
Yes.
And he's got to do it because he's contractually obligated. So hopefully, Daisy, learn a lesson from Mark. And we love Mark. The fan base is so treated well by Mark Hamill. He's such a great ambassador to us all. Love Mark Hamill. Love his Twitter. Love the guy. I just wanted more for him. So Daisy, take note and pay attention.
No joke. Absolutely.
All right, so reviews coming in from members of the cast because, as I mentioned before, J.J. Abrams locked in the movie.
Yep.
It's done.
It's done.
He's very happy it's
in
done.
The can.
So I want to play something for you guys, and I'm going to try to make this work technically, but one of the actors, Richard E. Grant. Are you familiar with him, Jake?
I am.
Okay. So Richard E. Grant, a phenomenal actor and really talented guy, was in The Iron Lady, which was a great, great movie. Some other wonderful movies as well. He's been in the business for a long time, and he's this fine British actor. And you know how we love our British actors in the world of Star Wars. Well, he's playing a First Order officer, and I'm excited to see what his role is, because to have an actor of this caliber, you know the role's got to be pretty meaty, and it's got to be pretty good. I mean, the guy was nominated for an Oscar last year for Best Supporting Actor, so the guy is a wonderful actor. I want you to listen to this and see what you think here.
I've just seen Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and nothing prepares you for this. I cheered, I shouted, I fist pumped the air, I cried, I stood and cheered. It's absolutely everything that you hoped it was going to be. I'm so proud to be in it, and I can't wait for you to see it.
Pretty amazing review.
Yeah, it sounds like you liked it.
You hear that breathiness to his voice there? I mean, the guy's emotional about it. You got to go on Twitter and check this out. And we actually retweeted this on our Twitter feed at the ForceGeeks. So find us on Twitter. You can see it there. We retweeted it. He actually liked our tweet, bud.
I know. It was so cool.
Yeah. We connected with a guy in Star Wars.
Well, and I mean, we are connected with him because obviously he's a fan. Whether or not he's in the movie, you can just tell by listening to him that it has the impact on him that it does on us, which is really cool because even though he's so close to it, it still has that oomph to get you and give you the nerd tingle.
Indeed. Geek tingles galore, my friend. And Chewbacca. Obviously, the late, great Peter Mayhew, not able to be a part of this. Really still absolutely in awe of everything Peter Mayhew brought to that character. But Jonas Suotamo, who has been playing this since Episode 7, kind of studied under Peter at that point to take over in Episode 7, played the full role in Episode 8, as well as Solo, the movie. This is his role again, Solo, in this one. I'm not referencing Solo the movie, but this is his role.
Yes, alone.
Fully just him in Episode 9 as well. Here's his tweet. Let me read this to you. Saw The Rise of Skywalker last night. This is on December 4th when he tweeted this, so he saw it on December 3rd. Saw The Rise of Skywalker last night with the cast. It was everything I had hoped for and more! Exclamation point. Congratulations to all who are a part of this film, especially my talented castmates who have outdone themselves 1,000-fold. I'm not even kidding you right now. I've got goosebumps.
I know.
I'm ready for this movie. Both of them saying it's everything you want and more. I mean, how much of a great... Granted, let's understand, they're actors on the film. They're not going to talk crap about it. They're going to make sure that you know this is a good film, but they don't have to be that animated.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a good piece of work. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, there's obviously legitimate, sincere love there from somebody who's a fan, like I said about Mr. Grant. Now, obviously, they're fans... and they got what they were looking for and more. And that gives me a lot of hope, for sure.
A new hope.
A new hope.
For sure, my friend.
That's sad. That exact phrase came into my mind right then, but I just didn't say it. So you and I are on the same wavelength, strangely enough.
I go for the easy ones, man. The low-hanging fruit. I'm right
into
there.
my crazy.
Well, there's a reason we've been friends for as long as we have. I mean,
true.
Seriously, again, we're in our 40s. We've been friends since we were 13, 14 years old. It is just crazy.
I know.
And I always, we enjoy talking about this sort of stuff. A little background, we have loved talking about this stuff, but we have not lived near each other for a long time.
I know, you keep moving away.
And we still connect. I know, I do. But it's the career. So just to give you a little background, Jake and I met each other in the Seattle area, a town called Issaquah, Washington, just outside Seattle. And we had just instantly connected, had a lot of fun. We had nerd classes together, and we maintained our friendship. We were in a junior ROTC program, became even closer at that time. And then we went to different schools. Life got in the way. We reconnected. And when I moved back to the Seattle area again, happened to work with his mother at a company. And but I then ventured out in a career in broadcasting. I was a long-time radio DJ and talk show host, did a lot of that, and then went into TV news. I'm a former TV news anchor. Did that for about a decade and a half, and so have been doing that for some time, and now I'm doing this podcast thing for the first time, and so excited that I'm doing this with a guy that I've loved my whole life.
Yes, sir.
This is so great they get to do this with you.
Yes, it is quite the experience, and it's... In case you couldn't tell, Nate's had, decades in broadcast by the way he talks because, he's just so good at it.
We're going to let you talk more because I can hog the mic too much, my friend.
I'm fine listening to you talk because you know how to do it.
All right. Okay. So we know what's happening. So my whole point of getting that whole thing about our friendship, it's been based on Star Wars. You're listening to this podcast, obviously, because either you're friends with us or because you feel like we do. You don't seek out a new Star Wars podcast. There's so many great ones already out there. And there's a lot of good ones to choose from. But this is something that if you're seeking this out, you're a hardcore fan like us. You belong with us, and we're so happy that you're joining this podcast with us because of that. So
absolutely.
Let's get into this because I briefly touched on it earlier. Interesting article from Wall Street Journal.
Yes.
The Wall Street Journal titled, Disney Disturbs the Force. Pleasing Star Wars Fans Complicates Saga. So here's some things they covered. How the sequel trilogy has meant, it was basically meant to create new toys to some degree. It's built new product. I mean, Disney doesn't buy a property unless they're wanting to make money from it. And they saw the value. It's $4 billion they spent for this and change. They want to make money. So that complicates things because if you're going to create new toys, that means you need new characters, you need new storylines, and you can't just strictly stick with the old crew. And that's been kind of a problem. How do you toe the line in such a way that you help out the fanboys like us and then realize that Star Wars was meant for kids and get the new people to come into play?
It's an interesting dichotomy that they have to figure out, isn't it?
Yeah, and they've stubbed their toe a couple times in the process.
Yeah.
So you look at what's happened. I mean, the sequel trilogy was meant for new toys. And then on top of that, new money. Same formula with Pixar and Marvel not working has come into play here because when they bought Pixar and Marvel, they increased the amount of productions they were releasing per year or every year. Because with Pixar, before they bought Pixar, that was every couple of years they were getting something. Now, Pixar puts out basically 2 movies a year. You're looking at one that is going to be a sequel of a past property that was good, and then you get a new one. And that formula has been working for them.
Yeah.
They could put out 2 a year. Then you look at Marvel. They start out 1 a couple years, and then Disney bought them, and they're putting out multiple a year, 2, even 3 sometimes. And they were looking at 4 at one point. And Marvel's been able to pull it off because of the expanse of the property. They have a lot of characters to pull from, a lot of material, source content to pull from.
A lot of dumpsters
Star
to set on
Wars,
fire, like Endgame.
well, and then you look at Star Wars.
Yes.
You look at Star Wars, and Ant-Man, I'm sorry, Ant-Man's one of my faves, dude.
That's a great movie.
Absolutely. Oh, it's awesome.
I liked it.
Awesome.
I liked it a lot, actually, and I really enjoyed the part at the beginning where the guy gets punched, you know? I mean, that was great, you know?
Paul Rudd, I'm a fan. The guy can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
so
he's
I
definitely
love that dude.
funny, and he does a really good job in that role, for sure.
But getting to the point at hand here, the same formula of churning out that content didn't work for Star Wars. And Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, has come out and said, we made some mistakes here. And I didn't know this, but I just read an article today, in fact, that Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm, actually did ask and begged to move back the Solo movie further. Felt that it was not a good idea to release it so quickly on the heels of the divisiveness that happened with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Bob should have listened to her and put that in for Christmas 2018 as opposed to putting it in the summer, because it would have played a lot better. That was a great movie. It deserves a sequel. It just came upon the heels of a very broken fan base at that point from everything that had gone on with our thoughts about, oh my gosh, Star Wars diverged from what I wanted.
And I still don't get that. It never connected with me, the hatred for The Last Jedi.
Oh, well, man.
I know you and I have been round and round about this, but
I'm eating my anger on that one. And here's the thing. And the article from the Wall Street Journal did a great job of driving this point home. You're looking at so much criticism from The Force Awakens because it's too much of a retread. That movie was a reboot to introduce new characters for the sequel trilogy. You can't have something old. You got to introduce something new. You can bring along some old, but it was highly criticized for being a basic retread of A New Hope. And it really was, to a great degree. Then you look at what happens with The Last Jedi, like, okay, fan base doesn't like that we were doing that. I mean, they bought a lot of money. It's still the biggest opening ever for Star Wars. But you look at that and they're like, okay, they want us to take some chances. Let's take some chances.
Sure.
And then they went too far in that direction.
And then they went
for a lot
Canto Bite on it.
And the storyline was, we won't go into it. Not this round anyway. We'll do it later. But so you're criticized if you do, criticized if you
Pretty
don't.
much.
And you try this, you try that, and there's problems. And they're trying to toe the line. And I think that they're going to go and, sit back for a little bit. Let the TV thing happen for a while.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good stuff
Let
happening.
Baby Yoda bring it all together for you.
So a lot rides on JJ and the Rise of Skywalker. And now that we've heard some of the reactions from the cast, I'm really, really excited. I believe the Force is with us on this one.
I'd agree.
And I like J.J. Abrams in a lot of his creative projects.
Oh, yeah.
They're great.
Yeah. And I really think that, he has a lot of potential to really bring this home. I think it'll be all the awesomeness of the original Star Trek reboot without the lens flares. So,
I love the lens flares. He gets criticized so much for the lens flares. I love the lens flares. I think it's a cool trick.
Do you watch the channel Honest Trailers? On
occasion.
Okay.
Not a lot. I need to check it out more.
Their honest trailer for the original Star Trek reboot was hilarious because they added in more lens flares.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that. That was a couple years ago. I've seen that.
I love J.J. Abrams. I've liked everything he's done so far, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trashing him. I just thought it was really funny.
In JJ, we trust.
Yes. That's a really good way to put it. And I really think that he, everything I'm hearing saying that we're going to tie this all up in a neat bow. It's going to make sense. It's going to be connected. It's going to go back to putting back together the mess that Disney made of canon by getting rid of so much stuff. Like I said last time, I don't envy guys trying to clean up after that. But it sounds like everybody's pretty happy with what they've done with it.
Can't wait. Can't wait. And it's not getting here fast enough. But I do want to point something out. And we've talked about The Rise of Skywalker, and we're going to talk a lot more about it in the near future. But Bob Iger, back to the man in charge of the mouse. He's talking about what's next. And that's what we're all curious about, what's next. We know the TV projects, but we also know there's this 2022 Star Wars movie that's hanging out there. Is it part of a series? Is it a one-off? What's happening with that? Well, here's some insight into the man's mind on how this is all going to work out. Iger was quoted saying, I'm quoting the article from the Wall Street Journal, Iger wants the next set of movies to be more accessible to common moviegoers unburdened by decades of Star Wars memories, adding, quote, if you're not going to update a property, you might as well stick it in a museum and watch it get old.
Yeah, that sort of thing scares me when they say things like that.
Me too.
Because what I hear when I hear that sort of thing is we're going to throw out even more canon. We're gonna tear even more stuff down so that people that are coming in as fresh faces don't feel like they're left out or like they don't know what's going on.
I have heard a recent quote that came from Kathleen Kennedy talking about the success of Marvel and why that won't work for the whole thing in Star Wars, that the formula is not going to work. And I disagree with her. I think it can. I think also, and we're going to actually bring on a guest, hopefully this next week, a good friend of mine, Daniel Wolf from Daily Superhero. Yeah, check out dailysuperhero.com, by the way, and we're going to get into a little sponsorship deal with them as well. But let me just tell you, Daniel Wolf has brought this up, and he's going to talk more about it next week, but her saying that there's just not the same amount of source material, while true, is misleading.
Yes.
There's plenty of material. The EU, for God's sake, is out there. Marvel does some great stuff with Star Wars. There's plenty of source material there. There's been some really great storylines they've worked out there. And I say, let Marvel loose. Let them do lots of comics. Let them get out there with the story group and really just go find some good storylines to follow. And then the source content just unfolds before you.
Yeah.
Don't limit Marvel. Let them loose.
I don't think this formula should be this difficult, you know? We want content.
I think once a year's great.
They make it. We buy it. It's pretty simple. Just do it.
If they're going to put out 2-3 movies a year, I'm going to go to them.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to those movies.
Well, that's
it's
the
going
thing.
to happen.
I mean, you know, fans might complain. They might get online and flame stuff all day long. They're still going to go. They're still going to buy things. They're still going to see the movies. Doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not saying abuse us, but we're pretty forgiving in the end of it. It's not like everybody's going to get so ticked off about Jar Jar Binks that they're going to boycott this entire franchise and stop going to Star Wars. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Like, and they're talking about, it's too much too fast. They said that Solo bombed because that one Solo was not as good of a Star Wars movie as others, but it was still good. I think it was great.
Yeah.
I think it was great. I think it was better than the prequels, to be honest with you. That's me. Not everyone feels that way, but I think it was better than the prequels.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I really enjoyed the movie. I thought the actors did a great job. I want more Solo stories. I hope they do something for Disney Plus because I want more of it. But I think the problem was you're coming off such a divisive film. The fan base was faltered because of that. And the marketing, let's be real, the marketing sucked for that movie. It was not that great. And I don't want to be too critical of Disney because they are a well-oiled machine, but they dropped the ball with that one. They didn't do it right. And they can learn from those mistakes and do better the next time. But I think blaming on too much Star Wars too fast is not the real
There's no such thing as
it.
too much Star Wars too fast.
Agreed.
That's retarded. That doesn't work. So I think that you have this huge base of incredibly talented directors and writers out there who are also huge fanboy nerds and fangirl nerds like we are, who are more than happy to make your content for you. Let them do it. Get going.
Can I get an amen?
Yeah, amen.
Oh, yes.
That's it. I mean, this formula just isn't that hard to me. You have like the biggest cultural phenomenon in our lifetime in Star Wars and the most ravenous and forgiving fan base in the world of any kind of thing at all in Star Wars fans. They just want content and they're willing to pay for it. And even if it's not the best thing in the world, they're still going to be hugely excited about it. So make content. Give it to us.
On that note, Words of Wisdom is going to bring us to a close today on this episode of The Force Geeks, a Star Wars podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Jake, my friend, thank you so much for being a part of this with me. Please make sure to join us again next week with new episodes of The Force Geeks, a Star Wars podcast dropping every Monday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, just about any place you can get podcasts from. We're there.
Yes,
we
sir.
also appreciate any kind of positive reviews you'd be willing to provide. If you want to give us a negative one, just go and hit us up on email. You can do that. Please, we're trying to expand the audience here, so we'd love to get some positive reviews out there. 5-star reviews would be nice. Let me just say that.
Yes.
And, of course, as I mentioned, you can hit us up via email at theforcegeeks@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, so follow us at theforcegeeks. And on Facebook, just search, hey, guess what? The Force Geeks.
Yeah.
Just search The Force Geeks. And remember, if you don't follow The Force Geeks, You're looking for your Star Wars in Alderaan places. That's right. I dropped the planet.
Yes.
Okay. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We love talking Star Wars. Jake, my friend, thank
Yes,
you so
sir.
much for being here, buddy.